We all love a mystery, and the disappearance of the Roanoke Colony is about as puzzling as it gets. In the late 16th century in modern-day North Carolina, 115 colonists went missing off the face of the earth. Gone. Nobody's been able to figure out where they went, or what happened to them. Their disappearances remain one of the most perplexing mysteries in American history. And as with any good mystery, there are several theories all laying claim to explain the fate of the British colonists that included men, women, and children. Let's look at the facts and the theories to try and make up our minds as to what most likely happened. The first Roanoke colony was initially established by Sir Walter Raleigh in what is now North Carolina, in 1585. Raleigh was a revered British explorer and soldier, and darling of Queen Elizabeth I. Roanoke lay just off the North Carolina coast and was founded as the first English settlement in the New World. Unfortunately, it lay smack bang in the middle of several hostile native tribes. The early colonists were subject to frequent attacks and were constantly running low on food supplies. They soon headed back to England in 1586. Raleigh and England were determined to make it work, and in 1587 they sent out another ship of colonists from England to Roanoke under the supervision of John White. White was an artist and cartographer who had sailed with the first expedition to Roanoke. At the time, England, Spain, and France were involved in fierce disputes over territories in America and in Europe. Settlement in the Americas was hotly pursued, for good reason. There was the lure of gold and lucrative new trading routes, plus the prestige of establishing new territories. For Spain, there was also the chance to spread Catholicism. The Spanish had colonized what is now Florida, and the British liked the strategic potential of having a settlement in Roanoke. White's daughter and granddaughter were among the new colonists, who were mainly middle-class Londoners, keen to make a name for themselves in the New World. In fact, his granddaughter Virginia was the first-born English baby in America. But life wasn't easy for Roanoke colonists. In fact, it was hellish. Crop yields were inconsistent, and they'd already lost a chunk of their food supplies during a landing accident. The original settlement was in dire need of repair, with insufficient housing. Added to this was the constant threat of attack from several native tribes. The colonists, many of whom were families, appealed to White to go back to England to get more supplies and manpower. He returned to England, but his timing couldn't have been worse. The Spanish Armada attacked, and all available British ships were called to help protect their fleets. White had no choice but to stay in England and help repel the Spanish forces, which delayed his return to Roanoke by almost 3 years. This was a testing time for White, whose thoughts were constantly with his daughter and granddaughter. He knew only too well how the colonists would have been struggling to get by, especially in the winters. There was some reassurance, nevertheless, as the settlers had formed a productive relationship with one of the local native tribes. The English had to be constantly on guard for attacks, but not all of the indigenous people were hostile. The neighboring Croatian tribes were friendly toward the colonists and provided much-needed assistance in the form of food and shelter. One of the Croatians was called Manteo, who formed close ties with White and the colonists and was instrumental in establishing a bond between his people and the English settlers. Manteo had traveled to England twice even, and had been made a lord by Queen Elizabeth. He was even with White when they returned to England. In 1590, however, White was finally cleared to head back to the New World. The return voyage was anything but smooth as they ran into attacks from French pirates and encountered dangerous seas, all of which resulted in the loss of lives. Finally, on the morning of August 18th of 1590, White's ship landed at the shore of the Roanoke settlement. He and his crew hastily disembarked, keen to see how the colonists were holding up after all this time. They were in for shock. The entire settlement was deserted. Every single person had left without a trace, including White's daughter and granddaughter. Houses had been emptied of everything bar heavy items. The only clue was the word Croatian, which was carved into the post. Crow, which was carved into a tree, was simply a reference to the nearby Hatteras Island, which was inhabited by the native Croatian people. Hatteras Island is approximately 80 kilometers south of the lost colony settlement. So what happened to the lost colony? There are several theories. One is that they were either attacked and slaughtered, either by a hostile native tribe or even the Spanish. Although the settlers had established a good bond with Manteo and the Croatians, there was plenty of bad blood between them and the other tribes. The colonists had often clashed with the Secotan tribe, who they were far from happy with the English claiming what they perceived to be their land and resources. Another theory is that the colonists had been wiped out by diseases like smallpox, measles, or typhus, which had all been brought to the colonists from Europe. Some historians have also speculated that the lost colony succumbed to famine and starvation. Archaeologists studied tree rings in nearby Virginia and found an area suffered from extreme drought between 1587 and 1590. While this may certainly have contributed to farming woes, it's unlikely to have caused the deaths of an entire colony. These theories have some merit. However, they don't account for the entire colony simply vanishing. If the settlers were massacred or wiped out by disease, there would have been corpses, or graves, right? If they were attacked or troubled by natural disaster, why are so many of their belongings and possessions missing? And what about the carvings referred to as Croatoan, or Croatian? The most likely explanation is that the colonists deserted Roanoke to start a new life elsewhere. We know that they had a good relationship with the nearby Croatian people, or Croatoan people, so if life was too difficult in Roanoke, wouldn't it make sense to relocate to the Hatteras Island and live with the natives? This would explain everybody packing up what they could carry and leaving together. Archaeologists also found pieces of pottery on the Hatteras Island that dated back to the 16th century. They were the same type, or at least similar to the fragments found at the Roanoke site. Similar types of ceramics have also been found at sites in Bertie County, North Carolina, which is inland from Roanoke. This evidence lends to the theory that the settlers might have left Roanoke in smaller groups, making it easier to survive. Some of the colonists may have headed to the Hatteras Island to live with the Croatians, while others might have ventured inland. If this was the case, it's very possible that the Roanoke tribe also provided shelter and protection. The Roanoke were a powerful tribe that occupied much of the territory near the Chowan River, inland from Roanoke. While this is the most logical explanation for what happened, we may never fully know what happened to the lost colony. This is why unsolved mysteries are so fascinating. They allow us to bounce various theories off of each other and apply our logic and our reasoning. They spark debate. And let's face it, a world without mysteries would be pretty dull.